Hello and welcome. Tonight, I want you to pull up a chair and lean in a little closer. We're going to talk about ghosts, not the kind that rattle chains or haunt old houses, but the ghosts that live in our kitchens, the ghosts of meals past. They linger in the faint, phantom smell of a grandmother's recipe, in the muscle memory of a simple task, and in the forgotten flavors that once held families together when the world outside was falling apart. Before celebrity chefs, before intricate food blogs, and certainly before we started photographing every meal we ate, there was a different kind of culinary creativity. It wasn't born from abundance, but from its stark and often terrifying absence. It was the ingenuity of the empty cupboard, the artistry of the nearly bare pantry. Our grandparents and great-grandparents were the original masters of the remix, the champions of the use what you've got philosophy, not because it was trendy, but because the alternative was hunger. They crafted meals from the fringes, from the things we now overlook or even discard. And in doing so, they didn't just survive. They created a culinary history that is as poignant as it is peculiar. We're going to embark on a journey to rediscover a collection of these culinary artifacts. These are the forgotten sandwiches of the common man, the unsung heroes of the lunch pail, the humble constructions of bread and filling that saw millions of people through the Great Depression, through the rationing of wartime, and through the lean years that peppered the American 20th century. Some of these combinations will sound utterly bizarre to our modern palates. Some might even sound like a culinary cry for help. But each one tells a story of resilience, of love, of quiet dignity in the face of hardship. These aren't just sandwiches, they are edible monuments to survival. So, let's peel back the layers of time and rediscover the forgotten poor man's sandwiches you'll wish you'd known sooner. Our journey begins with an undisputed king, a titan of the working-class lunchbox, the Bologna sandwich. Let's be honest, for many of us, the word Bologna doesn't conjure images of artisanal charcuterie boards from its namesake city in Italy. It conjures a sound-satisfying sizzle in a hot pan. It conjures a chef that iconic, perfectly round, pinkish disc. And it conjures a memory of simplicity. The American Bologna sandwich is the distant, blue-collar cousin of the elegant Italian mortadella, processed, packaged, and democratized for the masses. During the 20th century, and especially during the Great Depression, it earned a title far more prestigious than its humble price tag would suggest, the poor man's steak. This wasn't just a cute nickname. It was a psychological lifeline. In a time when a real cut of beef was a fantasy for countless families, calling this slice of processed pork and beef steak was an act of defiant optimism. It was culinary branding for the soul. A way to besto. A sense of dignity upon a meal of necessity. A single paper-thin slice could be laid across a piece of cheap, fluffy white bread, creating a visual promise of protein and substance. But the true genius of the Bologna sandwich lay in its preparation. You didn't just slap it on bread. Oh no, that would be an injustice. The gold standard was the fried Bologna sandwich. When the slice hit a hot, greased skillet, magic happened. The edges would pucker and curl upwards, crisping into a beautiful, savory brown. The center would puff up, forming a perfect little demi warm, meaty bowl. This wasn't just cooking, it was architecture. That self-made bowl became the perfect vessel for a smear of tangy, bright yellow mustard or a dollop of creamy mayonnaise. The debate over which condiment was superior was, and still is, a matter of regional and familial pride, a theological schism in the Church of Cheap Eats. Some families would score the edges with a knife before frying, a clever bit of kitchen engineering to prevent excessive curling and ensure an even cook. Others would fry it hard until the entire slice was a crisp, salty wafer. The bread itself was a crucial, if unsung, component, typically the softest, most unassuming industrial white bread, a pillowy, neutral canvas that existed solely to highlight its savory star and soak up the condiments. The Bologna sandwich wasn't a gourmet experience. It was something far more important. It was reliability incarnate. It was the comforting, greasy, salty promise that, in a world of uncertainty, lunch would be there tomorrow. From the reliable to the radically minimalist, we now turn to the bread and butter sandwich. Nothing, and I mean nothing, speaks to the stark reality of lean times quite like the bread and butter sandwich. It is the John Cage's 433 of the culinary world, a composition defined more by what's absent than what's present. 2 slices of bread, a layer of butter, and the quiet finality of nothing else. This wasn't merely a snack. In the bleakest moments of economic hardship, this could be a complete meal. It was a statement, a testament to the absolute bedrock of making do, but to dismiss it as just bread and butter is to miss the subtle art form it became. When you have only two ingredients, the technique becomes everything. The butter had to be at the perfect temperature, softened just enough to spread in a thin, even layer without tearing the fragile bread, an act of gentle persuasion. A frugal sprinkle of salt was often added, not just for flavor, but to act as an amplifier, transforming the creamy blandness of the butter into something richer, more savory. Sometimes the bread would be lightly toasted, just enough to begin melting the butter, creating a warm, comforting mouthfeel that elevated the experience from sustenance to solace. During the rationing of World War II, this was a common sight in a child's lunchbox. A loving parent, armed with nothing but a knife and a little imagination, might cut the sandwich into stars or animal shapes or press the tines of a fork into the butter to create a decorative pattern. These were small acts of love, attempts to inject a sense of specialness and care into a meal born of stark limitation. The bread and butter sandwich is a profound lesson in culinary philosophy, that dignity, comfort, and even a strange sort of elegance can be found in the absolute simplest of things, as long as they are prepared with intention and care. Now, hold on. Before you recoil in confusion or check if you misheard, let's address the next one head-on. The mayonnaise and banana sandwich. Yes, you heard that correctly. The unlikely and to many modern ears, unholy union of creamy, tangy mayonnaise and sweet, soft bananas. This wasn't a dare or a bizarre pregnancy craving. This was a legitimate, beloved sandwich that fed countless families, particularly in the American South, during hard times. It sounds like a culinary contradiction. A flavor profile dreamed up in a fever. But look closer, and you'll see the desperate logic. Mayonnaise, made from eggs and oil, was an accessible source of fat and a little bit of protein. Bananas were, for a time, an incredibly cheap and readily available fruit, packed with potassium and calories. Together, they formed a sandwich that was calorically dense, surprisingly nutritious, and, most importantly, affordable. The construction was a delicate art. A truly ripe banana was key one with a few brown spots, ensuring maximum sweetness. It would be sliced, often lengthwise, to create long planks that covered the bread more efficiently. Then came the mayonnaise, spread thinly on soft white bread, just enough to add its signature creamy tang and richness without completely overpowering the fruit's gentle flavor. It was a balancing act. Too much mayo, and you had a savory disaster. Too little, and it was just a bland banana on bread. For a special treat, a parent might add a light dusting of white sugar or a drizzle of honey, pushing it into dessert territory. Of course, the most famous enthusiast of a variation of this sandwich was none other than Elvis Presley, who preferred his fried and with a generous addition of peanut butter. But before the king made it famous, it was the quiet staple of mothers trying to give their children something sweet, filling, and cheap. The contrast between the tangy, fatty mayonnaise and the sweet, almost floral banana created a flavor profile that, once you get past the initial shock, is strangely compelling. For many who grew up on them, the taste is not one of weirdness, but of childhood and care, a fond memory that lingered long after their financial circumstances improved. From the strangely sweet to the pungently powerful, we arrive at the onion sandwich. A sandwich of raw onion, nestled between two slices of bread, might sound less like a meal and more like a punishment, or perhaps a potent form of social repellent. Yet, this sharp, assertive sandwich was a lifeline for countless workers in the early 20th century. Onions were, and still are, astonishingly cheap, available year-round, and packed with a surprising amount of flavor and nutrients for their cost. When meat was a luxury and other vegetables were seasonal, the humble onion was always there. But this wasn't just a matter of hacking a raw onion and slapping it on bread. There was a technique to tame the beast. The secret was to slice the onion paper thin, so it was almost translucent. These delicate slices were often soaked for a few minutes in a bowl of cold water, a simple kitchen trick that leached out some of the harshest sulfur compounds, tempering the onion's fiery bite into a more manageable, crisp sweetness. After their bath, the slices were patted meticulously dry and arranged on bread, which was usually spread with butter or lard to add a crucial layer of fat. A drizzle of vinegar was sometimes used instead, its acidity playing beautifully against the onion's pungency. A generous pinch of salt and black pepper, and the meal was complete. This was the quintessential lunch pail sandwich for coal miners, factory hands, and manual laborers. It was cheap, it was filling, and it had a built-in security system. Its powerful, lingering aroma was a highly effective deterrent against would-be lunch thieves. Beyond its flavour, it delivered a payload of simple carbohydrates for quick energy and was believed to possess natural antibacterial properties that could help ward off colds, a bit of folk wisdom that modern science has since validated. What began as a food of pure necessity eventually became a preference for many, who acquired a taste for its unapologetic, sharp simplicity. It was a sandwich that announced its presence, a bold statement of flavour in a world of otherwise bland and repetitive meals. Next up is a sandwich so familiar, it feels like it has existed forever, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Today, the sponge is the undisputed king of the kids' menu, a symbol of carefree childhood lunches. But its origins are rooted in the very adult concerns of economics and nutrition. While the concept first flickered into existence in recipe books around 1901, it was the Great Depression that cemented its place in the American culinary canon. Peanut butter, once a delicacy for the wealthy, had become an affordable, shelf-stable source of protein thanks to industrialization. At the same time, homemade jellies and jams were a common way for families to preserve the bounty of summer fruit, capturing seasonal sweetness for the lean months ahead. The and was the perfect marriage of these two frugal staples. Its true ascent to legendary status, however, came during World War II. Both peanut butter and jelly were included on the U.S. military's ration lists. Soldiers or Gs ate countless versions of the sandwich, and upon returning home, they brought their taste for it with them, popularizing this combination across the entire nation. The magic of the and lies in its perfect, self-contained completeness. It's a symphony of contrasts, sweet and salty, creamy and fruity, soft and sticky. It delivers protein, fat and carbohydrates all in one convenient, portable package that requires no refrigeration. Frugal families developed techniques to make the ingredients stretch, spreading the more expensive peanut butter thinly all the way to the crusts, while concentrating the precious jelly in the center to prevent it from leaking out. Regional variations blossomed, dictated by local agriculture and canning traditions. In the Northeast, it was often Concord grape jelly. In the South, you might find it with strawberry preserves, and in the heart of Appalachia, a smear of spiced apple butter was a common and delicious alternative. Each jar of jelly told a story of the local harvest, making every punch a small reflection of its specific time and place. And now, we reach a point of true desperation, a sandwich that represents the absolute bottom of the pantry, the ketchup sandwich. When the cupboards were not just lean, but truly, hauntingly bare, the ketchup sandwich emerged. It was a culinary last resort that, through the strange alchemy of childhood memory, somehow became beloved. The recipe is brutally simple: 2 slices of bread and a smear of ketchup. That's it. This sandwich is the embodiment of making something from absolutely nothing. During the Depression, when fresh vegetables were a distant dream for many, ketchup, with its concentrated tomato base, provided a ghost of nutritional value and, more importantly, a powerful burst of flavor. It was sweet, tangy, and savory all at once. Complex taste profile in a world of monochrome meals. Parents, trying to add a touch of substance or ceremony to this meager offering, would often toast the bread. The warmth and crunch created the illusion of a more substantial, cooked meal. Some would even add a sprinkle of sugar directly onto the ketchup, enhancing its sweetness and turning the sandwich into a strange, savory sweet dessert substitute for children who might not see a real cake or cookie for months. It wasn't unheard of for school cafeterias in the 1930s to serve these as a hot lunch option when budgets were decimated. For the generation of children who grew up during these times, the ketchup sandwich wasn't a sign of failure. It was just lunch. Many continued to make and eat them occasionally, even in times of prosperity, not out of necessity, but out of a nostalgic connection to their own resilience. It was comfort food in its purest form, a direct link to a past they had survived. If the ketchup sandwich was the bottom of the pantry, our next entry comes from the bottom of the barrel, quite literally. The La sandwich. This is perhaps the most humble, most primal, and most unapologetically functional of all poor man sandwiches. It represents sustenance stripped down to its most basic element, calories, a simple spread of rendered animal fat on a slice of bread. Its only job was to provide the raw energy needed to survive and work. The families in remote rural areas, particularly in Appalachia, where every part of a slaughtered animal was used, lard was a staple. A sandwich made from it was a quick and potent fuel source. There were minor variations, depending on what was available. A sprinkle of salt for a savory meal, or a sprinkle of sugar for a sweet one. The choice was less about culinary preference and more about which craving was stronger that day. Lard sandwiches were incredibly filling, if not nutritionally balanced. The high caloric density was their entire reason for being. This made them especially popular with men engaged in heavy physical labor, loggers, miners, farmhands who burned thousands of calories a day and needed a dense, portable energy source. Those who had access to fresh, home-rendered lard would swear by its superior flavor and texture compared to the mass-produced, hydrogenated varieties sold in stores. On very special occasions, a family might add a thin scraping of molasses, transforming the utilitarian meal into a rare treat. The lard sandwich is a stark reminder that before we ate for pleasure, for health, or for status, we ate for one reason only: to have the strength to see the sun rise the next day. From the heavy and primal to the light and refreshing, we find the cucumber sandwich. Today, the cucumber sandwich is irrevocably associated with high society, dainty, crustless triangles served with afternoon tea, a symbol of leisure and refined taste. But its origins are far more humble. The cucumber sandwich began its life as a working-class hero, a form of edible air conditioning. The farm workers toiling under a hot sun or factory workers in sweltering conditions, thin slices of cucumber between bread offered something meat couldn't: hydration and profound refreshment. During the summer months, Depression-era families with even a small garden plot could find themselves with an abundance of cucumbers. Sliced thin and laid on bread, often with a whisper-thin spread of butter or mayonnaise and a sprinkle of salt, they became a seasonal staple. The cool, crisp crunch of the cucumber was a welcome antidote to the oppressive heat and a delightful contrast to the typically heavy, starchy meals of the time. If dill was growing in the garden or a bit of vinegar was on hand, it would be added to enhance the flavor. Unlike most of the sandwiches on our list, which were primarily about delivering calories, the cucumber sandwich offered a psychological boost. It was the feeling of eating something fresh, green, and alive. It represented a small moment of delicate pleasure and coolness in a life that was often hot, heavy, and hard. It's a beautiful example of how, even in the deepest poverty, people found ingenious ways to create moments of simple, sensory delight. Following the theme of garden bounty, we arrive at a true icon of summer, the tomato sandwich. For most of the year, scarcity might rule the kitchen, but for a few glorious weeks in late summer, the garden offered up its treasure. And the undisputed jewel in that crown was the tomato. The tomato sandwich was a celebration of this seasonal abundance, a fleeting, perfect meal that cost next to nothing but tasted like $1,000,000. This was not a sandwich made with pale, hard, supermarket tomatoes. This was a sandwich that demanded a proper, garden-grown, sun-ripened tomato, still warm from the vine. The construction was a ritual. The tomato was sliced thick, its vibrant red flesh glistening with juice. It was laid upon simple white bread, which served as the perfect soft, absorbent canvas. Then came the crucial seasoning, a generous showering of salt and black pepper. The final touch was a source of great regional debate. In the South, it was almost always a light, creamy layer of mayonnaise dukes, if you were a purist. The mayo's tang cut through the tomato's sweetness and acidity perfectly. In the Midwest, a simple spread of butter was often preferred. But the secret, the thing that made it transcendent, was eating it immediately. The juices from the tomato would begin to soak into the bread, mingling with the mayo and seasonings, creating a messy, glorious and utterly unforgettable experience that required you to lean over your plate to avoid dripping on your shirt. During peak season, this sandwich might be eaten for lunch every single day until the first frost claimed the last of the tomato plants. The anticipation for that first tomato of summer and the ritual of making that first sandwich became a cultural touchstone in many communities, a simple meal that perfectly encapsulated the dual nature of their lives, a symbol of both poverty and profound, delicious abundance. Now for another pairing that sounds like a dare, but is beloved by its adherents, the peanut butter and pickle sandwich. At first glance, this combination of creamy, nutty peanut butter and sour, crunchy pickle seems like a prank. But for those who grew up with it, it's a masterpiece of flavor and textural engineering. Depression-era cooks, in their infinite wisdom, discovered a fundamental culinary principle: fat loves acid. The sharp, vinegary tang of the pickles cuts through the rich, sometimes cloying, fattiness of the peanut butter with stunning efficiency. The result is a surprisingly balanced and incredibly satisfying sandwich. The most common partner was the dill pickle, its briny, garlicky notes providing a perfect savory counterpoint. However, in regions where home canning of sweet pickles or bread and butter pickles was common, those would be used instead, creating a sweet and sour dynamic. But it wasn't just about flavor. It was about texture. The The smooth, yielding peanut butter against the crisp, snappy crunch of the pickle was a sensory delight, adding a layer of interest to a diet that could often be monotonous and soft. This sandwich remained popular well into the 1950s, especially in rural areas where both peanut butter and home-canned pickles were pantry staples. Like many of these Depression-era creations, the children who ate them out of necessity often continued to enjoy them into adulthood. The unique flavor combination became a powerful link to their childhood, a taste of home that was both peculiar and deeply comforting. Let's move from the pantry to the sea, with the tuna salad sandwich. The widespread availability of canned tuna in the early 20th century was a revolution for budget-conscious households. It offered a cheap, shelf-stable, and versatile source of protein, mixed with a binder like mayonnaise and perhaps a few other inexpensive additions. A single small can of tuna could be stretched to fill multiple sandwiches, feeding a whole family for lunch. The tuna salad sandwich was born. Its popularity soared during World War II when meat rationing was in full effect. Tuna became a patriotic alternative to beef and pork. Navy wives, in particular, were known for their creative tuna salad recipes, stretching the precious protein even further by adding chopped celery for crunch, onions for bite, sweet pickle relish for tang, or chopped hard-boiled eggs to add bulk and extra protein. This wasn't just a family meal. It was a community meal. Large batches of tuna salad were a fixture at church socials, potlucks, and community gatherings because they were a reliable and economical way to feed a crowd. The tuna salad sandwich is a testament to community resilience, a story of how shared knowledge and kitchen wisdom for little tricks of adding this or that to make the food go further helped entire neighborhoods weather hard times together. It was a network of shared recipes that sustained a nation. From the sea to a can of a different sort, we have the fried spam sandwich. When spam was introduced by Hormel Foods in 1937, it was a modern marvel, a canned meat product that required no refrigeration and had a seemingly infinite shelf life. It hit the market just in time to become a key player during both the tail end of the Great Depression and the entirety of World War II. Sliced thin and fried in a pan until its edges were wonderfully crisp and caramelized, spam on bread became a beloved working-class staple. During the war, American military personnel consumed staggering quantities of it, over 150 million pounds. It was served for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, becoming an icon of life. When these soldiers returned home, they brought their acquired taste for spam with them, solidifying its place in the American kitchen. The fried spam sandwich, often dressed simply with mustard or mayonnaise, transcended its origins as a food of necessity. It became a cultural touchstone. Nowhere was its impact greater than in Hawaii and other Pacific islands, where its introduction during the military occupation led to it being fully integrated into the local cuisine, resulting in iconic dishes like spam musubi. The spam sandwich isn't just a story about a cheap meat alternative. It's a story of global conflict, cultural exchange, and the strange ways that wartime foods can become permanent fixtures in our collective memory, remembered not just for their utility, but for their deep connection to a specific, transformative moment in history. For a sandwich that packs a serious nutritional punch, we turn to the egg and sardine sandwich. When protein was scarce but essential for fueling a day of hard physical labor, this sandwich was a nutritional powerhouse built from the humblest of ingredients. Canned sardines, packed in oil or mustard sauce, were mashed together with chopped hard-boiled eggs. A splash of vinegar or a bit of mayonnaise would bind the mixture, creating a potent, savory filling that was rich in protein, calcium from the tiny, edible bones, and vital omega-3 fatty acids. This combination was particularly embraced by immigrant communities, especially those from Northern and Eastern Europe, who had long-standing traditions of preserving fish like herring and sardines. It was a familiar flavor from the old country, adapted to the New World's lunch pail. The sandwich traveled exceptionally well, making it a favorite for factory workers and miners who needed sustained energy to get through long, demanding shifts. The flavor was strong, fishy, and not for the faint of heart, but it was undeniably effective fuel. When available, finely chopped onion or pickle relish would be added for extra flavor and texture. The egg and sardine sandwich stands as a testament to the intuitive nutritional wisdom of poverty. Long before scientists and dietitians were extolling the virtues of combining complementary proteins and healthy fats, working-class people were doing it instinctively, creating perfectly balanced fuel out of necessity. Next, a sandwich that demonstrates the art of making a little bit of luxury go a very long way, the bacon and peanut butter sandwich. Imagine you have just one precious strip of bacon. How do you make its incredible flavor permeate an entire meal? The answer is this ingenious sandwich. The single strip of bacon would be cooked until perfectly crisp, then crumbled into fine, salty, smoky shards. These bacon bits would then be mixed directly into a scoop of peanut butter, distributing that coveted bacon flavor throughout the entire spread. During periods of meat rationing, this combination was a stroke of genius. It allowed a family to enjoy the deeply satisfying taste and aroma of bacon while using a minimal, almost homeopathic amount of the actual meat. The salty, smoky crunch of the bacon bits was the perfect foil for the rich, creamy sweetness of the peanut butter. It was a flavor and texture combination that delivered a level of satisfaction far greater than the sum of its humble parts. For a special treat, a drizzle of honey or molasses could be added, creating a trifecta of salty, sweet, and smoky that was truly decadent in its context. This sandwich is a masterclass in creative flavor distribution. It shows how even the tiniest scrap of a luxury ingredient could be used to elevate an ordinary meal into something special and memorable. From a touch of luxury, we return to pungent simplicity with the mayonnaise and onion sandwich. Much like its butter and onion cousin, this sandwich delivered a bold flavor punch when other, more expensive ingredients were out of reach. The sharp, raw bite of a thinly sliced onion was tamed and mellowed by the creamy, fatty embrace of mayonnaise. As with the straight onion sandwich, the slices were often soaked in cold water first to reduce their intensity. Then, they were layered with a generous spread of mayo between two slices of simple bread. This was a go-to, inexpensive filling option for factory workers. It became particularly associated with employees in these textile mills of the American South and the manufacturing plants of the Midwest. It was functional food, first and foremost easy to assemble, cheap to make, and providing enough caloric energy from the bread and mayo to sustain a day of physical labor. A sprinkle of black pepper or a dash of paprika might be added for a bit of extra flair if it was on hand. The mayonnaise and onion sandwich is a perfect symbol of working-class pragmatism. It wasn't designed to be elegant or to follow culinary trends. It was designed to do a job, to fill a stomach and fuel a body, affordably and effectively. And now, for what might be the most elemental comfort food on our list, a dish that blurs the line between a sandwich and a nursery pudding, the bread and milk sandwich. This creation was often a meal of last resort, but one that, through some strange magic, transcended its poverty-stricken origins to become a symbol of profound comfort. The method was simple. Slices of bread, sometimes day-old and a bit stale, were briefly dipped or soaked in milk, which was often sweetened with a spoonful of sugar. The two soggy slices were then pressed together, creating a soft, sweet, almost cake-like meal for those with very few alternatives, especially for children or the elderly. During the bleakest days of the Depression, parents would often serve this as a special dessert to children who had no access to proper sweets. If a little cinnamon was available, it would be sprinkled on top, elevating the humble ingredients into something that tasted surprisingly like bread pudding or French toast. This sandwich appears frequently in memoirs and oral histories of the era, remembered with a complex mix of emotions. It was an emblem of extreme hardship, a clear sign that the pantry was empty. But it was also a powerful symbol of parental love of a mother or father using the absolute barest of staples to conjure up an experience of sweetness and comfort for their children in a world that offered very little of either. From the last scraps of milk and sugar, we turned to the last scraps of a precious roast with the chicken salad sandwich. When a single chicken had to feed a family for several days, it was treated with the reverence of a sacred object. The chicken salad sandwich represents the final, brilliant act in this performance of thrift. After the Sunday roast, and after the leftover meat was used for Monday soup or stew, the last remaining bits of chicken, the tiny pieces clinging to the bone, the little scraps that weren't enough for a proper serving, were meticulously picked off. These precious morsels were chopped finely and mixed with mayonnaise, instantly stretching a tiny amount of meat into a filling for multiple lunch sandwiches. Depression era and wartime cooks were masters of extension. They would add diced celery, chopped apples, or hard-boiled eggs to the mixture, bulking it out and adding flavor and texture while making the chicken go even further. There was a direct correlation. The finer the chicken was chopped, the more sandwiches it could make. This was the economy of scarcity in action. And yet, the result was delicious, providing protein and satisfaction. For church socials or community events, the crusts would be trimmed off and the sandwiches cut into neat triangles, a simple act of presentation that transformed an everyday food of frugality into something elegant and celebratory, without any additional cost. The chicken salad sandwich is a monument to resourcefulness and a deep, abiding respect for food, a promise that not a single scrap of precious meat would ever go to waste. But what if you couldn't even afford that one precious chicken? Then, you made a mock chicken sandwich. This is a testament to pure culinary ingenuity. When the real thing was an impossible luxury, creative cooks simply invented a convincing substitute. The mock chicken spread was usually based on a foundation of coarsely ground bologna or other inexpensive processed luncheon meats. This base was then mixed with breadcrumbs or crushed saltine crackers to mimic the texture, and a host of seasonings to replicate the flavor of real chicken salad. The magic was in the seasoning. A careful blend of sage, celery salt, onion powder, and black pepper could create a surprisingly convincing illusion. Some recipes even called for a single drop of yellow food coloring to mimic the rich, buttery color of a well-fed chicken. These sandwiches were a common feature in factory cafeterias and school lunchrooms during the meat rationing of World War II. Some regional variations didn't use meat at all, instead mashing cooked navy beans or chickpeas as a base. The mock chicken sandwich represents a refusal to accept deprivation. It's a story of creative defiance of cooks who, when told they couldn't have something, simply said, "Fine. I'll make it myself," using whatever they had on hand. Next is a pairing now considered a classic, but one whose origins lie in careful resource management, the ham and cheese sandwich. It's hard to imagine a more standard, unremarkable sandwich today. But in an era of scarcity, the classic ham and cheese was an exercise in calculated economy. Delay ham would be sliced so thin it was almost transparent, and a single slice of processed American cheese could be carefully divided to serve multiple sandwiches. A Depression-era mother might use just one slice of ham and one slice of cheese to create lunch for her entire family, bulking out the sandwiches with inexpensive lettuce or a generous spread of mayonnaise. The combination was nutritionally strategic. It provided a more complete protein profile than either ingredient could alone, and it made the more expensive meat stretch further. This was intuitive nutritional planning born of necessity. Some families would save the hard, waxy rinds of cheese, melting them down with a bit of milk to create a spreadable cheese sauce that could be used more frugally than individual slices. The ham and cheese sandwich, in its original, high-frugal form, represents a quiet, calculated approach to nutrition, a story of how people instinctively found ways to create wholesome, balanced meals even when their resources were severely limited. From the muscle of the chicken, we now move to its organs, with the chicken liver sandwich. In a household where nothing could be wasted, the organs of an animal were a vital source of nutrition. Chicken livers, often discarded today, were transformed into a rich, iron-packed sandwich filling at a minimal cost. The livers would be cooked often sorted with onion sand, then finely chopped or mashed, mixed with a little mayonnaise or schmaltz rendered chicken fat to create a spreadable. This filling was both incredibly economical and exceptionally nutritious. Rural families who raised their own chickens particularly relied on these sandwiches as a way to practice true, nose-to-tail eating out of necessity. The spread was sometimes enhanced with chopped hard-boiled eggs or a bit of pickle relish to cut through the rich, metallic flavor of the liver. Farm children often carried these in their lunch pails, unknowingly benefiting from a concentrated dose of iron, vitamin A, and other nutrients crucial during their growing years. The chicken liver sandwich represents a form of sustainable eating long before the term became fashionable. It was a whole animal approach born not from a culinary trend, but from a deep-seated understanding that every single part of an animal that gave its life for your sustenance deserved to be used with respect. For a powerful flavor punch from a tiny package, we have the anchovy paste sandwich. A small, unassuming tube of anchovy paste was a secret weapon in the working-class kitchen. This intensely salty, umami-rich condiment could be used to flavor multiple meals, and this pungent sandwich was one of its primary vehicles. A very thin layer of this paste would be spread on buttered bread. That was often it. But the flavor was so potent that a little went a very long way. When available, a few slices of hard-boiled egg would be added, their creamy blandness providing the perfect canvas for the anchovy's aggressive saltiness. This sandwich was especially popular in immigrant communities from Mediterranean countries like Italy and Spain, where cured anchovies were a dietary staple. It was a way of maintaining a food connection to their homelands, a familiar taste in a new and often difficult world. The strong flavor ensured a satisfying eating experience even with a minimal amount of filling. A few thin slices of onion or a squeeze of lemon juice might be added for complexity. The anchovy paste sandwich is a perfect illustration of how concentrated flavors help to compensate for a lack of quantity during hard times. It proves that a memorable, satisfying meal doesn't always require a heaping plate. From one fishy spread to another, with a spicy twist, curried sardine salad sandwiches. This creation hails from the mid-20th century, a time when American palates were beginning to open up to more global flavors, even in budget-friendly applications. Canned sardines were as we've established, a cheap and reliable staple. But this sandwich took them in a bold, new direction. The recipe blends mashed sardines with aromatic, earthy curry powder, creamy mayonnaise, a splash of tangy lemon juice, and often crunchy chopped celery. The result is a spread that bursts with a complex, zesty flavor that is far more exciting than a simple sardine on a cracker. Generously spread on your favorite bread and perhaps topped with crisp lettuce or cucumber slices, it's a collision of cultures in a sandwich. In England, similar curried salads often included chopped apples or raisins for a touch of sweetness. The American versions tended to be more savory, sometimes incorporating chopped hard-boiled eggs or capers for an extra flavor boost. It's a fantastic example of how a simple, everyday ingredient could be utterly transformed by the introduction of a new spice, in this case, the catch-all curry powder that was becoming widely available in American supermarkets. Now for a sandwich that is a true exercise in delicious excess, the Monte Cristo. The Monte Cristo is a glorious, decadent beast of a sandwich, a classic American diner dish that likely evolved from the French casse staple, the croque-monsieur. It's an egg-battered ham and a turkey and cheese sandwich, pan-fried or sometimes even deep-fried to a perfect golden brown. Its rise to widespread popularity in the mid-20th century is often partly attributed to its prominent placement on the menu at the Blue Bay restaurant in Disneyland, which opened in 1967. This magical setting helped cement the Monte Cristo as a sandwich of fantasy and indulgence. What makes it so unique is its beautiful straddling of the savory and the sweet. After being fried, the rich, savory, cheesy interior is often dusted liberally with powdered sugar and served with a side of raspberry preserves or maple syrup for dipping. It's lunch and dessert all at once. The experience of dipping a hot, greasy, cheesy sandwich into sweet jam is a culinary roller coaster and a true American innovation on a classic European theme. And now for a cold cut that time has largely forgotten, the olive loaf sandwich. Imagine yourself back in the bustling, optimistic mid-20th century. The American lunchbox is a landscape of new, convenient, and sometimes strange processed meats. One of the stars of this era was olive loaf. This distinctive cold cut, a blend of ground pork and beef studded with pimento-stuffed green olives, offered a prepackaged punch of flavor. Assembling the sandwich was a breeze. Layer a few slices of olive loaf with creamy mayonnaise or tangy mustard, perhaps some crisp iceberg lettuce, all nestled between two slices of fresh, soft white bread. This simple yet flavorful sandwich became a picnic and lunchbox favorite, often enjoyed with a side of potato chips and a dill pickle spear. It tells the story of how the rise of industrial food processing and the proliferation of cold cuts completely reshaped American lunch culture, offering quick, varied, and flavorful meal options for a society that was increasingly on the go. While the modern trend towards fresh, less processed foods has led to its decline, the olive loaf sandwich remains a powerful, nostalgic taste of simpler culinary times for many. Next, a sandwich whose name is as messy as its eating experience, the Sloppy Joe. Another icon of mid-20th century American comfort food, the Sloppy Joe isn't so much a sandwich as it is a saucy, savory pile of deliciousness served on a bun that's fighting a losing battle to contain it. The filling consists of ground beef, sauteed with onions, and simmered in a tangy, sweet sauce typically made from ketchup or tomato sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and other seasonings. It is a one-pan wonder, a cheap and easy way to stretch a pound of ground beef to feed a whole family. The origins of the Sloppy Joe are hotly debated. Some stories trace it back to a bar in Havana, Cuba, run by a man named Joss, who served a similar sandwich. Others place its birth in a cafe in Sioux City, Iowa, in the 1930s, created by a cook named Joe. Whatever its true origin, by the 1940s, the Sloppy Joe was a fixture in American homes and school cafeterias. It's the ultimate casual, no-frills meal, a dish that requires a stack of napkins and a willingness to embrace the mess. From one saucy hero to another, we have the unconventional ravioli sandwich. This is a playful, almost absurdly simple lunch option that taps into the beloved flavors of Italian-American cuisine while fully embracing the convenience of a sandwich. This creation likely emerged in the wake of the immense popularity of canned ravioli, which was introduced to the American public by Chef Boyardee in the 1930s. The concept is as straightforward as it sounds. Take canned ravioli, either meat or cheese-filled, and place them, sauce and all, between two slices of bread. Often, the entire sandwich is then toasted or grilled like a grilled cheese, which helps meld the flavors and provides a wonderful textural contrast to the soft, pillowy ravioli inside. In some regions, this creation is known by other names, like an Italian Sloppy Joe or a ravioli hero. It gained a devoted following among budget-conscious college students and anyone who appreciated the comforting, familiar taste of ravioli in a convenient, handheld format. Let's dial back the complexity for a moment and return to pure, unadulterated comfort with the creamed corn sandwich. This sandwich is a deep dive into nostalgia, a taste of simpler times, and the soothing power of homespun food. It is exactly what it sounds like, canned or homemade creamed corn, spread generously on buttered bread. The creamy texture and sweet flavor of the corn provide a uniquely comforting taste, making it a popular choice during times when fresh ingredients were limited but a can of corn was always in the pantry. To make it heartier, the sandwich could be served open-faced and toasted, or even grilled like a grilled cheese, creating a warm, gooey center. This dish reflects an era when homemade simplicity was not just valued, but was the primary mod of cooking. It's a taste of a bygone era, a simple, sweet, and starky hug in sandwich form. Returning to a previous champion for a slightly different take, we have the macaroni and cheese loaf sandwich. Transport yourself back to the mid-20th century, when American food innovation was in a wild and wonderful phase. Enter the macaroni and cheese loaf. This was a deli product, a fascinating loaf-like creation that combined pasta, cheese, and sometimes bits of ham, all held together in a sliceable form. This intriguing dish, which first appeared in the 1950s, became a unique and peculiar addition to the American sandwich repertoire. You would layer slices of the loaf between bread, usually with a smear of mustard or mayonnaise. It was a novel solution for those who craved the hearty, comforting taste of macaroni and cheese but wanted the convenience and portability of a sandwich. Often served with chips or pickles, it was a beloved, if slightly bizarre, creation that perfectly blended nostalgia with mid-century practicality. From one processed meat to another with a spicy kick, deviled ham sandwiches rose to prominence in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thanks in large part to one company. The term deviled simply refers to the practice of mixing a food with hot and spicy seasonings, like mustard, hot sauce, or cayenne pepper. The William Underwood Company, founded in Boston in 1822, began canning their signature deviled ham product in 1868. Packaged in a distinctive can with a red devil logo, it became one of the oldest and most recognizable food trademarks in the United States. Its long shelf life and intense flavor made it a pantry staple. To make the sandwich, you simply mixed the ground, spiced ham with mayonnaise to create a spreadable salad, then served it on bread, sometimes with lettuce or pickles for extra crunch. It was a quick, easy, and flavorful solution for a packed lunch. For the more adventurous eaters of the past, there was the corned beef tongue sandwich. While it might not be a common sight on menus today, this sandwich reflects a time of culinary resourcefulness and a willingness to embrace unique cuts of meat. Beef tongue, when prepared correctly, is incredibly tender and flavorful. The process of corning it, which is a form of salt curing, is the same method used for the more familiar corned beef brisket. The corn tongue would be cooked until perfectly tender, then thinly sliced and layered between slices of robust rye bread. It was typically served with a sharp, spicy mustard or a pungent horseradish sauce that could cut through the rich, savory flavor of the meat. This sandwich was a delicacy in many traditional Jewish delis and European-style butcher shops, a testament to the diverse and inventive nature of past American cuisine. And from a specific preparation of tongue to the broader category, we simply have the tongue sandwich. The sandwich tells a story of culinary ingenuity, of transforming a once-overlooked, humble cut of meat into a celebrated delicacy. In countless traditional Jewish delis and European bistros, beef tongue was the star of a slow cooking process. It was simmered for hours with herbs and spices until it was fork tender, then peeled and thinly sliced. Served on a hearty rye or a crusty roll, the sandwich was a masterpiece of flavor and texture. The key was the bold condiment, a spicy brown mustard or a sinus-clearing horseradish that provided the perfect counterpoint to the rich, almost buttery flavor of the meat. Though less common today, it continues to be celebrated by those with a taste for traditional, offal-based fare, a true connoisseur's sandwich. Next, a sandwich that captures a uniquely American love affair with sweet and savory, Spam and pineapple sandwiches. This combination is a direct result of the culinary influence of Hawaii on the mainland United States. As we know, Spam became a staple in Hawaii during World War II. Pineapple, of course, is the island's most famous agricultural export. The marriage of the two was inevitable and delicious. The recipe showcases this pairing perfectly. Slices of Spam are fried until crispy, then paired with a sweet, juicy ring of pineapple, that has often been lightly grilled or charred to caramelize its sugars. Nestled between slices of toasted bread, this sandwich is a delightful explosion of contrasts. The salty, fatty meat with the caramelized, acidic sweetness of the pineapple creates a flavor profile that is pure Taipei culture bliss. Sometimes dressed with mayonnaise or a slice of American cheese, it reflects the surge in popularity of Hawaiian culture on the mainland, particularly during the 1950s and 60s. Let's now consider a sandwich that is more of a concept than a strict recipe, the victory sandwich. This sandwich is a symbol, a culinary emblem of post-war optimism and the triumph over scarcity. Born from the rationing and hardships of wartime, the Victory Garden movement encouraged citizens to grow their own food to support the war effort. The victory sandwich, by extension, was a creation built from these humble, homegrown ingredients and whatever else was readily available. It was traditionally assembled with simple items, buttered bread, a modest layer of tangy mustard, and whatever vegetables from the garden or scant cold cuts were on hand. It represented resourcefulness and making do, but with a spirit of pride and resilience. Today, chefs sometimes reinvent the victory sandwich with gourmet touches, but its soul remains rooted in its humble origins, a celebration of triumphing over lean times. From the garden to the freezer aisle, we have fish stick sandwiches. The 1950s were a golden era for convenience foods, and one of its brightest stars was the breaded fish stick. Gorton Pew Fisheries of Gloucester, Massachusetts, was one of the first companies to successfully market frozen, ready-to-cook fish sticks to the American public. Promoted heavily during the new age of television advertising, they quickly became a go-to protein source for busy families. They were quick to prepare, mild in flavor, and perfectly shaped to fit between two slices of bread with a dollop of tartar sauce or ketchup. To make one, you simply baked or fried the fish sticks until golden and crispy, then assembled your sandwich. Their immense popularity, especially in school cafeterias, reflects the broader post-war trend toward processed foods that offered easy, quick solutions for feeding the growing families, or the baby boom. From a modern convenience to an ancient preservation method, we find potted meat sandwiches. Before modern refrigeration, preserving meat was a serious and essential task. Potted meat was a practical solution that was a staple in the early 20th century and before. The process involved cooking meat like beef, pork, or chicken until it was very tender, mashing or grinding it, and then sealing it in a pot or jar under a layer of fat. This fat cap created an airtight seal that could preserve the meat for an extended period. To prepare a simple potted meat sandwich, you would spread butter on 2 slices of bread and add a generous layer of the potted meat product. It provided a convenient, shelf-stable, and satisfying meal. As refrigeration became common, the necessity for potted meats declined, but they remain a part of our culinary history, a reminder of the resourcefulness of past generations. And now, for the ultimate way to use up holiday leftovers, the turkey and cranberry sandwich. This tasty combination rose to popularity in the mid-20th century, showcasing an inventive and delicious way to transform the remnants of a Thanksgiving feast into a brand new meal. The sandwich is elegantly simple: stack slices of leftover roasted turkey and a generous smear of sweet tart cranberry sauce, often accompanied by a layer of leftover stuffing or a bit of mayonnaise, between 2 pieces of bread. This culinary creation is genius because it not only prevents food waste but also perfectly captures the festive essence of the holiday in a single, portable package. The savory, juicy turkey, the sharp sweetness of the cranberry, and the herby goodness of the stuffing create a flavor combination that is, for many Americans, as beloved as the original Thanksgiving dinner itself. Finally, we arrive at a sandwich that sounds like a wish come true: the cheese dream sandwich. This nostalgic delight, dating back to the early 1900s, is a comforting, melty creation born during a time when simple ingredients were celebrated for their heartwarming qualities. It is, in its purest form, an open-faced grilled cheese sandwich. A slice of bread is buttered and topped with a thin slice of American cheese, then broiled or baked until the cheese is perfectly melted and bubbly. It was sometimes enhanced with a subtle drizzle of honey, a strip of bacon, or a sprinkling of toasted breadcrumbs for extra crunch. Over the years, people have reinterpreted the classic with artisanal cheeses or a touch of spice, but its enduring appeal is rooted in its straightforward, comforting simplicity. It's the taste of home, a warm and gooey dream made from the most basic of ingredients. These forgotten sandwiches are more than just quaint recipes. They are America's hidden food history, written on slices of bread. They tell the stories of how ordinary people weathered extraordinary hardship not with despair, but with creativity, dignity, and a profound understanding of the ingredients they had. They remind us that good food isn't always about exotic flavors or elaborate techniques. Sometimes, it's about making the most of a little. It's about finding comfort in radical simplicity. And it's about the sacred act of sharing what little you have with the people you love. So the next time your grocery budget feels tight, or you find yourself staring into a nearly empty pantry, perhaps you'll think of these classics. You might just discover that between two humble slices of bread, you can find not just a meal, but a powerful connection to the quiet, everyday heroism that defines so much of our shared human story.